So one of the other things that we have yet to talk about is the Phil Spencer leaks. Basically what happened, this is my understanding, is that the FTC and Xbox are in this big fight over the Activision deal. It's been going on forever. However, they filed a bunch of documents as part of that lawsuit, and somebody at the court made an oopsie. Basically, there were a bunch of documents that they were supposed to upload, and then there's like a little drop-down list where they have to select like classified or hidden from public view or whatever, and they didn't select that from the drop-down. So we just got an ocean of documents which were not supposed to be made to the public at all. Like tons and tons of internal documents, leaks over their upcoming consoles, new controllers, emails he sent out on the day of the PlayStation 5 reveal so that they could talk. Like he was talking to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, explaining his thoughts on their setup based on the PS5 reveal. All of this crazy, just crazy stuff. And of course, none of it was expected to be made public. So first and foremost, I mean, the obvious one to talk about is Project Brooklyn. This is the Xbox Series X refresh. Now, full clarity, or for full clarity's sake, this is not like a mid-gen like update to the console lineup. It is a Series X, just in a different form factor with some other things that they've done. So like, they have it's going to be 2 terabytes. It'll have USB-C in the front, reduced the power consumption by a good bit, 100% recyclable packaging, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, improved efficiency on the die, like a bunch of stuff like that. So it's like a mid-gen refresh. It's their version of like a slim console effectively, but it's cylindrical, which is interesting. They just were like, we did a weird rectangular cube last time. Let's just do a cylinder this time. Make a AA battery instead of a box of Cheez-Its. So, you know what? It's an interesting design choice. I still personally prefer the more bold look of like the PS5, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. And then with Project Sebile, I don't know. They announced this, or didn't announce this. This was in their slide deck as well, and it's the world's best controller now playing on a screen near you. And basically the pitch, as far as we can tell, is that it's supposed to be in like always everywhere controller that you can connect to whatever you want, whether it's a TV, whether it's a console, your phone, whatever. It's supposed to be your one console controller for everything. One interesting thing also is that they're shifting towards swappable rechargeable batteries, which as of right now, they don't do. Right now they use AA's, which actually for sustainability of like secondary markets, long-term, like legacy support is actually probably better. Like the fact that you can just get a Xbox One controller, throw some AA's in it and it works. That's awesome. Whereas like a PS3 controller, if it was used even moderately or even not at all, the lithium ion batteries inside are heavily degraded. So eventually the battery life is just going to be terrible or non-existent on a lot of these controllers unless they have the swappable batteries, which is actually a cool thing for like long-term collectors of this type of hardware. But it seems like they're striking an interesting balance going to swappable and rechargeable on these. Now, one thing just to bear in mind is that none of this is like locked and loaded and confirmed. It's probably going to look a little bit different when all is said and done. It's just not locked and confirmed. So like, for example, one of the other things that was leaked in the emails was information about a Red Dead Redemption remake that was coming from Take-Two. And everybody saw this when these leaks dropped and was like, oh my God, it's confirmed. So they did that terrible port and now they're also doing a remake. Well, apparently the slide deck and the emails where that information came from was from 2020. And 3 years ago, as far as I understand it, it was still planned that they were going to be doing a remake, but after the GTA trilogy debacle, Take-Two was just like, just give them a straight port. It's fine. It's fine. We'll just do that. I don't think that it's actually going to happen. I think that they probably pivoted, and these are just holdover emails from all of this. One of these other things that was interesting is that we finally got to hear what Phil Spencer said about the hole in their lineup in 2022. If it isn't ringing a bell, basically in 2022, there was like a 16 to 18 month glut in Xbox's lineups where they just didn't have any games to show or release at all. Everything got delayed. Apparently most of this was because of COVID. So there were just a lot of problems that stacked up that caused this. But in this leaked email, he actually expresses a lot of these detailed concerns. So he's emailing Matt Booty, Jamie, Sarah, Jarrett West, Tim Stewart, all of these guys. This is Jamie's from ZeniMax, just a lot of big important people. And then he said, with the news that Starfield is going to miss holiday, bear in mind this was back in May of 2022, and he's also emailing on a Saturday. Phil working overtime, baby. Ooh. Yeah, M Booty, Matt Booty. What a name. What a name. So with the news that it's going to miss holiday, not broadly communicated yet, let's let Jamie manage that. Jamie being the guy from ZeniMax, so, you know, it's not widely known, so we're not going to spoil the news for everybody. But still not a ton of clarity on the launch date of Redfall and Stalker 2 development, so impacted by the war in Ukraine. I feel we are in a huge hole with our games lineup, both for platform marketing differentiation and our Game Pass content, which is absolutely true. They definitely were struggling with that. There was a huge glut. It's interesting that he was putting Redfall and Stalker 2 in the same category, implying that they would be releasing in similar timeframes. But apparently not. Apparently, we got Redfall kind of shoved out the door. Stalker 2 is still somewhere. We'll see. But he goes on. We keep talking a bit AAA a quarter in the service, and it feels like we are likely to go through a gap of almost 16 months between big exclusive launches on our platform. Halo Infinite being our last on December 8th, 2021. This is really a disaster situation for us given all we've invested in content across studios at our Game Pass Content Fund. We need to learn from this and build a plan forward. So he says it's a disaster situation. 16 months of no big games coming from first-party studios is a disaster to him, which is cool. It's cool. I mean, I admire the candidness and him just being honest with it and not being in total denial. It feels like every time I've ever seen an email leaked from like Jim Ryan, it feels like he's just like in another dimension, just kind of like a prick. But at least Phil is being real. I feel, he's being honest with himself and with everybody on the team. In terms of learning, I think we need to get much better at overall portfolio planning on our games with real honesty on dates. Doing this from memory, from summer 2021 through December of 21, we had an amazing lineup of games that Flight Sim to Console, Psychonauts 2, Age 4, Forza 5, and Halo. There were good 3P, I don't know what 3P is, like Back 4 Blood. We set a very high bar in 21 on quality and pacing of content, which was awesome to see, but to come off of that year with no big exclusives launching in 22 is a portfolio planning miss that we can't afford. Oh, just third party? Okay, 3P, that makes sense. Okay, third party, yeah, you're right. I was trying to think like three player, but that doesn't make sense. That third party. Yeah, you guys are smarter than me. If we need to delay launches, understanding there's a financial impact of that, to create more regular beats for us, we need to do that. We have to all understand that the situation we are in now is a failure of our planning and production execution. Now, let's roll up the sleeves and get planning on the next 2 years of games. We need to build an accurate list of new game launches that are coming in the next 24 months with expected dates. For now, I don't want to litter this list with content updates or seasons for existing games. We need launches. Let's build this across first party, second party, and third party, looking at Game Pass launches. I think we're going to see that our next big game launch is Redfall, hopefully. Who's going to tell him? I'm not aware of the Stalker 2 dates, but I saw that the studio delayed indefinitely. Are there other games we can get? I know the overall portfolio is fairly light from third party, but let's dig. We also need to get some clarity on our internal launch dates. I'm sending this now as a real pressure for Tamarind and how we are going to show up in terms of dates. It will be very obvious to the community with both our lack of updates on so many games and lack of clarity on almost everything in the show that we are out of position. I need us to work this as leaders. We've dealt with difficult situations before. We'll do it again. I'm frustrated by where we are, but we'll get through that. Most important is building a winning plan. Let's get on that, Phil. Pretty clear and concise. I think he makes very good points to his team. And the part that I find most interesting, if we need to delay launches, understanding there's a financial impact of that, to create more regular beats for us, we need to do that. So and this reflects what we've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, is that they've delayed a lot of stuff, but they're trying to get in this position where they can have big releases once a quarter, basically. And I think that's a better approach. Like, Sony has struck a really good stride of having a big game that generates interest during the holidays and Black Friday. They're going to have that with Spider-Man 2. And so they sell a ton of consoles. They sell a bunch of bundles. They get a bunch of people excited to boot up their PS5 again. And they do that on a very regular basis. And that's just what you have to keep doing. As for other stuff, Damp, that's one thing we can address. They did also leak, or I guess it was leaked. Okay, so this is the post. Title release schedule. This was also from their internal schedule list of releases. They say fiscal year 20, Doom Eternal and DLC, Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor, Fallout Wastelanders, Deathloop, free-to-play or mobile, Project Whirlwind, Fallout Shelter Online. Okay, they've got all these scheduled. Fiscal year 21, Starfield. We all know how that went. Elder Scrolls Online expansion, Redfall. Jeez, these games were delayed so much, dude. It's crazy. When does their fiscal year end? Does anybody remember? They run from July 1st to June 30th. So this would be fiscal year ending in 21. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, it's wild how much these have been delayed. Like, that's what's really striking me. Fiscal year 22 Indiana Jones game was set to release, and a DLC for Starfield. Like, the game was supposed to be out with a DLC by now, with the Indiana Jones game and an Oblivion remaster. And then they had very far down the line, in the same year as Elder Scrolls 6, they expected to have a Fallout 3 remaster, a sequel to Ghostwire Tokyo, which I would guess has been canceled because I don't think it did that well. Dishonored 3. They also released this information about their future expectations for what they're doing for their next generation of consoles. And as I've said at this point for years, Psychic here, I've said for a long time, I think the future for some of these big AAA games, especially open world adventure RPGs and stuff, is to transition into cloud-based AI computation. So when you're playing something like a Cyberpunk game, all of the NPCs, all of their AI, all of that stuff is processed in the cloud. You can even integrate like ChatGPT and stuff like that to have dynamic conversations with NPCs. All that happens in the cloud and then comes back down to the console. It's going to trigger a lot of people. It's going to freak a lot of people out because you will need to be connected online to have these huge games with ridiculous like dynamic content like that, which is part of their strategy. You know, it's much harder to pirate a game when you have to be connected to their official servers, which is great for them. But I think this is where they're clearly pivoting. Ubisoft has already shown off their new Fractal engine tech where they aim to do this type of thing. Xbox is moving into it. PlayStation's moving into it. So I would not be shocked at all if in like 5-6 years, pretty much every single game you play is going to need to be connected to the internet. Right now, how they justify it is like, oh, well, it's to make sure we can send quick updates to players and stuff. What I think they're going to continue doing, though, is like everybody knows that's not a very good excuse. But when they're like, no, the game physically does not function without being connected to the servers, that's their built-in excuse right there. Like, it's very clear this is where they're all going. Xbox, PlayStation, Ubisoft, EA, Take-Two, they're all going to be doing this always online, server-based AI stuff. And it will enable them to do some cool stuff, I'm sure. But just be ready, because there's going to be a lot of games coming from these big studios that probably can do cool stuff, but that require always on connections. Yeah, you will own nothing and be happy. Yeah. It's clear they've been going towards this for like a decade, and now they're just reaching it. So buckle up. But they showed off some of the other stuff that they're expecting, and the way they describe it is really, really interesting. Develop our next generation hybrid game platform capable of leveraging combined power of client and cloud to deliver deeper immersion and entirely new classes of game experiences optimized for real-time gameplay and creators. We will enable new levels of performance beyond the capabilities of client hardware alone. Fancy way of saying we're going to use the cloud to complement the native hardware to try and do cool things, such as having like AI and things like that processed in the clouds and then sent back down to the players. Or like if you played the betas or anything of the finals, that's a good example, where the finals is a game with destructive environments, and it's a co-op or a multiplayer game where you're all in teams fighting and you can just blow up buildings and stuff. And all of the destruction is handled on the server side, so everybody can blow up buildings and like everybody's experiencing the same physics of the building collapsing. Instead of it being processed on each console or PC, it's handled in the cloud. That's what they're talking about, being able to do stuff like that for every single game. So you're no longer required to have like the top of the line PC to get something like maybe even potentially eventually to have graphics on the level of like Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty with the path tracing. You'd be able to pair it with the cloud computation to try and meet in the middle or something. So that's their vision. And I do think it could lead to some really cool experiences, in their words. But buckle up, because the blowback's going to be crazy. Because a lot of these games are going to require permanent online connections. Not like you can disable it and you just won't get updates, but like if you disable it, the game won't work because it needs that. Just like the finals won't work offline. Even if you're going to be like, hey, I have a supercomputer, let me process it all on my PC. It just won't. It has to be connected to the cloud. So this seems to be their vision for it. And if you think this is just Xbox, I think you're very naive. Sony is doubling down on this as well, as is Ubisoft, as is every other major publisher. So in 5 years, I think every single game is going to be like this. And because all of them will be doing it, there's nothing we can really, like, we don't have leverage. They're like, you're a gamer. You want to play video games. Every video game releasing this year requires an online connection. Deal with it. And we won't be able to say or do much of anything. Like, there's no, okay, we'll just pivot and we'll go over to this. Like, we can play like a Larian game. We can play Baldur's Gate 3 again, because it's going to be like 6 years before we see the next Larian game. But those examples are going to be very few and far between. Very, very few and far between. They expect it to come out in calendar year 2028. You can see that how they kind of phrased it all was, with the original Xbox, the main feature was Xbox Live with DirectX Innovation. 360, they brought Kinect and the Digital Media Store. In 2013, they had the Xbox One and the security processor. I don't even remember what that was. Game Pass and DirectX Innovation. That was also like later in the generation. And maybe this has to do with like the media box stuff they were doing, where it was like a cable box, but I don't know. Not keen to talk about that. And then in 2020, they brought Project xCloud as one of their main features there with direct storage. And that's certainly true. xCloud is very impressive. The direct storage is super cool. Allows for some cool stuff. I still don't think we've seen a lot of games take like strong advantage of that. But we'll see. I think it's probably held back by the Series S a good amount, but whatever. And then next gen, they're talking about calendar year 2028. Cloud hybrid games, immersive game and app platform. And here's one thing to just bear in mind. All of these console manufacturers tend to stay pretty close to each other because they want to make sure that third-party devs can bring their game on PS5 to also the Series X and vice versa. And that was true of the Xbox One gen, of the 360 gen, of the Xbox gen. They always try to keep the console performance roughly in parity. So if Microsoft thinks that they can build out their cloud hybrid games where this is like the main feature, maybe this is only for first party. Maybe it's only for first party. But I would guess one of their main goals is that they're seeing that Sony is also working on stuff like this. And this is just what third-party games are going to be like. They're all going to require cloud infrastructures and stuff. So don't have to like it. It just is what it is. I mean, that's where it's going. Cohesive hybrid compute, cloud to edge architecture across silicon graphics and OS, enabling ubiquitous play. So they're saying cloud to native hardware architectures designed around both the silicon, the graphics themselves, and the OS. So parts of the graphics can be processed in the cloud, parts of the OS, like, it's crazy. The cloud will be half of the console. It could mean that we could see consoles cheaper than we've ever seen before because they're all going to be glorified, like, just cloud streaming boxes, let's be honest. But that seems to be where they're imagining this going. And then AI and multi-language enablement, optimization and acceleration of game performance, operations, and development for players and creators. Yeah, I think you're going to start to see, like, Microsoft is the majority holder, or I guess they own like 49% of OpenAI, I think it is. But they own a good old chunk of OpenAI to get their ChatGPT integrations. And we've already seen people integrate that with mods into like Skyrim, where you can have conversations with Skyrim NPCs. It's crazy cool. And I think you're going to start to see that kind of thing implemented with big games as well. And then they say, I don't know what this even means, open and extensible game and immersive app development platform. I have no idea what that means. I'm going to be honest. No idea. And then they go in, powered by AI and multi-language models. Super resolution deep neural networks. So again, just like DLSS, FSR, that kind of thing. Frame rate interpolation. So frame generation, as far as I understand it. xCloud latency compensation. That's hopefully implemented, because right now latency with xCloud is a problem. Game experiences, AI agents, codecs, and RL-based. Codecs and RL-based, okay. So AI agents are going to be used to give unique experiences, like, again, NPCs being able to just have open conversations with you. Matchmaking and player ranking. Yeah, use, like, AI to help with player matchmaking. That could work, I guess. Thank you, Alphatron. Eventually consoles will go away. Prepare for that. Yeah, and I mean, I think the vision makes sense. Like, especially as cloud infrastructures get better and better and connectivity gets better, I can understand why these guys are like, yeah, you'll just pull up your phone and you can just stream whatever game you want straight to your phone. You don't have to buy a $500 device for that. I get that vision. I understand why they're excited by that and why they see that as the future. I think it has a long way to go before that's really viable, but I do understand why they think that's the future, because it is just seamless and effortless. I get it. Creator efficiency, AI game testing. Use AI to test your game for you. That's cool. Procedural content generation. Yeah, procedural content. Hashtag Starfield. Physics and inverse kinematics. Cool. NLP, neural network language processing, dialogue generation, maybe? I'm not sure. Player services, safety, and toxicity. It's funny to see toxicity on an actual, like, official slide for Xbox. Personalization and discovery support services. Yeah, and so each thing yellow also, they are currently in research and proof of concept phases. And then with this, all of this already exists, they say. They're implementing this where they're like scanning dialogue coming through Xbox Live chats and voice speeches, dictation basically from your conversations in chat, and then transcribing it, making sure you're not saying anything like super toxic or anything, which is cool. Engagement and retention management, monetization improvement using AI to help with that, and cloud resource optimization. Interesting. I mean, it just seems like they are trying to come up with what's the next step for gaming and for their platforms. It's tied up in AI stuff, which of course makes sense because they own a good chunk of OpenAI and they want to utilize that. But the big thing, and I'm telling people now so we can prepare, because once they officially announce this, there's going to be a lot of blowback. They're clearly moving towards everything going cloud-based. So like if you're upset right now about physical games going away, like physical consoles are going to start to be a thing of the past. Like just wait. Just wait. It's happening. Clearly, that's where they see this going. xCloud is being built, as is PlayStation Now and whatever, NVIDIA or GeForce Now, I think is what it's called now. All of these systems are being built out to give people a way to play these console and PC games through the cloud where they don't have to buy the hardware. And they're in their infancy. But in the next 5 to 6 years, as we approach the next generation, it seems clear to me that they're just going to pivot, and that's going to be the main goal. He took my thing.